Hello, my name is Matthew, and earlier this week my little book channel reached 4,000 subscribers, and of course I'm very happy about that and grateful for everyone that watches my channel and decided to subscribe and maybe find some enjoyment in watching or listening to me talk about books. And to celebrate uh, the milestone, I put out a call for questions and asked anyone that was interested to leave a question about whatever they would like. And I got a whole bunch of responses, really great questions. Thank you again for everybody leaving questions. And I hand wrote all the questions out uh, because I don't, that's just how I do it. And I thought I would just go through the questions and see how long these videos go. It might be one video, it might be two or three videos, and we'll just have to see. So the first question is from Doom Antidote. Congrats on the 4K. Thank you. Is there a lesser known ancient classic, Greek or Roman or elsewhere, that you think deserves more wider readership? And the thing with the classics, the Greeks and the Romans, there's only so many of them, and the ones that are known really deserve to be known. So there's no real hidden gem that I've ever come across or heard anybody talk about. Uh, Something that did come to mind, though, is the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, which, of course, everybody knows, and I feel like it's more popular now than it's ever been. And it's this little philosophical book with Marcus Aurelius, the Caesar of his age, um, talking about these philosophical ideas and Stoicism. Very popular, everybody knows it. In the beginning of Meditations, Marcus Aurelius actually mentions that he was reading Epictetus. And not that Epictetus is not very well known or anything, but not nearly as popular as the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And um, the writings of Epictetus do expound that Stoic philosophy much more in a much more robust way. It's much longer. It goes into much more depth about Stoic philosophy. Somehow, somehow Marcus Aurelius gets a certain kind of pass, which I've thought about before and I've never really understood. So Stoicism is this idea of um, removing all of the external factors in your life and realizing that the only thing that really matters is your reaction to the world. And so everything that's going on should be a matter, everything going on around you should be a matter of indifference. And it's only how you're reacting that uh, should matter to you. And I love meditations. I think that there's a lot of value, um, there's a lot of enjoyment and insight to find in meditations. Um, but the person that's telling you is a Caesar. It's like the emperor of the world, the most powerful person on the planet. And he's talking about, you should wake up, don't complain, go to work, you should be thankful um, for what you have. And it does not correspond to the world, the life that Marcus Aurelius um, was experiencing. Um, he could say, you can find a lot of value in gardening and working the earth, from the perspective of being a Caesar that could go off and enjoy a little bit of gardening. Uh, but that instruction should also apply to the farmer who works 18 hours a day every single day of his life. Now, Epictetus was a Greek slave and a cripple. So something comes off to me as much more, the philosophy comes off as much more authentic when you're a slave and you're a cripple and you're still saying there's not much concern for the world around you. It's much more how you respond to the world. So I would say Epictetus. If you're interested in meditations, it's such a great next step. I should say I don't really think that Stoicism. I should say Stoicism always seems to be an incomplete or superficial philosophy. It's almost more like a mood instead of a worldview. It's a mindset that is good to keep in your pocket, but it's no way to live a life, and no one does. Anyway, if a loved one dies, the correct, healthy response should be grief, and to grieve naturally and care about things outside of yourself, not to respond stoically. But like for me, for example, I work at a customer service counter at a large retail store, and if someone comes in determined to be unhappy and wants to yell and complain, having a bit of a stoical mindset in that specific interaction actually is quite healthy. To be in a situation like that and think, you're upset, you're angry. That doesn't mean I have to be upset or angry. And so those are my thoughts on Stoicism. And to answer your question, thank you, Doom Anecdote. Trip says, who is your favorite poet? And for the longest time, I really circle around the Romantics, Wordsworth and Coleridge, Shelley, Keats, Byron, Lord Byron, Don Juan. It's fantastic. I've never been a big fan of Blake, but recently two of the poets that I've for the past year have spent more time with. The number one right now is Horace, which is such an unusual poet to come across, especially in English language translation. You don't get a sense of meter or rhyme or things that there's things that seem to be missing that I've come to expect from poetry. And even still, I just constantly pick it up. He writes these epistles, which are letters. He has satires, which are like social commentary, odes, and just kind of talking about stuff. And they just feel personal and intimate. You really get a sense of the poet's voice and personality. They are specific. He's talking about, for example, the daily life in ancient Rome, what it was like in the city, and what it was like in the country, and the public life and the private life during this time. and it's still just it also feels um, eternal. It has this posterity. Um, it's incredible. So I would say Horace. I've also been reading uh, Walt Whitman a lot in the past year. So those are my two favorite poets um, at the moment. For the longest time, it was Wordsworth, um, but I'll say Horace. Question number 3. Arsenal N.I. Congratulations, mate. My question is, what is the book that changed your reading tastes the most? For me, it was 2666 by Roberto Bolaño. I read that and realized that Stephen King and all the popular books that everyone was reading is a waste of time. That one book for me opened my mind to look deeper into literature and then classics. What book did that for you? It seems like there's a lot to unpack there. I don't necessarily, I'm not sure I agree that um, reading Stephen King or any author or anything that is popular and entertaining is a waste of time. Watching television or watching a fun movie, I don't think is a waste of time if it's entertaining. But I do understand that there's books that feel like they have more substance and depth, and um, finding a book like 2666 or I'll say the Karamazov brothers, um, you can come across this realization that a book can be equipped with much more than just entertainment. Um, as far as the book that changed your reading tastes the most, kind of separately than from the context in which you're asking, in the past year, it was Lord of the Rings, which is actually kind of going in the opposite direction of, of your journey, where it was the first time I read a fantasy novel really ever, and I loved it. Just this, and I thought I wouldn't. I thought it was just going to be this silly book with hobbits and elves and trolls and goblins, but it just managed to work its magic on me um, in the way that um, I was enlightened that a certain genre outside of what I normally read um, can bring a lot of things that maybe um, I didn't realize I could enjoy from a book. But the idea of maybe not being a reader or reading things like Stephen King, I've never read Stephen King, and it's not because I look down on his books or anything like that. It's actually some of the most famous books that I've heard about often don't appeal to me. And what I mean is the horror books, like Salem's Lot or Cujo or Pet Cemetery. I hope those are all actually Stephen King books. I really have an adverse reaction to the horror genre. I don't like being scared. I frighten easily, so I just avoid the whole thing. But in any event, I didn't really read growing up or when I was a teenager. I didn't read for pleasure. And I've met my old friend Bob, who I've talked about before, introduced me to all sorts of books. And there's two books in particular that are kind of typical classics that really showed me how entertaining and fun and engaging those old dusty books can be. And the two, very different in some ways, Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy and The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Jude the Obscure is this somber, tragic, depressing, harsh story. Of course, The Picture of Dorian Gray, which does have some horror elements, but not really, is just Oscar Wilde with all of the conversation, the sparkling, fast-paced dialogue, the beautiful writing, supernatural story, and those were two books, two experiences that when I read them, I really thought, man, these are good. Not a chore, not work, not notches that I'm putting on a post. Like, okay, I'm glad I read that one. Now I've read that one, and that's all I will say about that. 16 minutes. Question number 4 by I.E. Ronham. Hello, Matthew. What do you think of The Great Gatsby? I love it. I read it a long time ago, but I remember just thinking that it was a great book. Fitzgerald in particular, I always seem to have a very different idea of a Fitzgerald book than when I actually sit down and read the book. And Great Gatsby is just like that. I had recently read Tender is the Night, and I might have read another. Well, I read Tender is the Night, and with Fitzgerald, I always had this idea of like the jazz age, and it's like ritzy and glamorous, and like the Roaring '20s in all of its glory, out drinking and having parties, and everybody's laughing, and the novels are actually much darker and sadder and tragic than I ever remember. I always just have that stuck in my head that these are like these kind of ritzy, glamorous books, and then when I go back to them, I go like, wow, they're really beautifully written and powerful and critical of some of the behavior with all of the carelessness and carousing. They can be very sad books. Let's see. Question number 5 from Angie Jones. Hello, Angie. Congrats, Matthew, and thank you for continuing to post videos. I plan to keep posting videos. My questions relate to the big surprises. Have you ever read a book that is considered challenging that turned out to be easy and approachable, or a tragedy that turned out to be incredibly funny in places? Which books don't deserve their reputation? I'm constantly surprised by books. Tolstoy comes to mind. At least as a school child, Tolstoy is Tolstoy is just synonymous with big, long, serious books. The great Russian writer kind of looking down on you, and he has those two big, imposing, great works. And aside from the length, there's hardly a writer that's more approachable and easy to read. They're all they'll have a lot of characters and things like that, but um, they're almost like these like soap opera stories, um, and they're page turners. They just have a really great plot, and all the characters are not confusing at all if you're reading it and having a good time. Um, Compared to Dostoevsky, which has all of the same trappings as far as reputation, um, being intimidating and challenging, um, and he is. Thinking of Dostoevsky, um, although he's not as approachable, um, Dostoevsky has this reputation of being an incredibly depressing author, and in all of his books, I'm thinking about the big books. Um, there are moments that are hilarious, and they're designed that way. They're parts that are going to be funny parts, and they are built up to. So it's not just a funny book all the way through, of course, but it's so well earned. I think of Father Zazimov when he starts his putrefaction. It's this holy man that now he's rotting and he stinks, and everyone's in there holding their nose, trying to avoid the smell and pretending like it's not there. It's really funny. Um, what else? Which books don't deserve their reputation? I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that question. There's a whole lot of books that are really popular and everybody likes that I don't like, but whether or not my opinion doesn't alter a book's reputation, I suppose. Um, where are we? 22 minutes. So I'll stop here and then I'll just come right back and we'll do part two. And thank you.